Hello. I certainly hope you can hear me out there in the world. Thank you so much for tuning in. I always want to try and do a channel update video diary thing each month. Just so I'll just keep talking so that I have some idea whether my mic is turned up well enough. I went live suddenly. Good. So, I'll let it update there. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to say hello out there. And if you want to chat, that's cool. If you want to send me questions, that's cool. I'm going to ramble a little bit about what I've been attempting when I should have been doing a couple other things. As you can see, I've got changed up home environment stuff going on. This allows me to live stream easier and do more productions, hopefully. And definitely more videos at a professional standard, hopefully. So those videos would include more mythology, dictionary type videos, more magical terms type stuff. I'm also really hoping to come out with a cultural studies definition, dictionary videos very soon. So that'll be something that I've been planning for years. Basically, sociology, cultural anthropology, but cultural studies is more current focused. So it incorporates a lot of things, but it's primarily about how to plan society and societal experiments that have happened over history and what we've learned from them and how to go forward making fewer mistakes or understanding the world around us better. And that's why I got into astrology really young, was because I wanted to have a leg up in understanding others. I thought that if I really understood their chart, or at least their sun sign, it'd give me a starting point for talking about things that they would like and for understanding other people better. And it just kind of morphed into just about every other area I study, because I'd apply my astrology or my tarot or all of these cosmological systems that I was drawn to when I was growing up to about age 10 or 12. And then I'd apply that to my schoolwork, which is how I stayed in school. And eventually people introduced me to anthropology and sociology, and that became my main focus in high school. And so I started writing papers, which I hope I will share with you on this channel. Some of them need to be revised because time has passed, time marches on. So they should be revised before they're published. Um, and so but they incorporate a lot of topics. Like one of the first papers that I wrote that was not a book report that I was really impassioned about was the sociology of deadheads 101, which talked about the Sufi dancers and all of the various subclaves of Grateful Dead audience fan members. And so this fandom, this interest in Star Trek and the Grateful Dead and music bands and the San Francisco Bay Area music scene in general, psychedelia, and a bunch of beatnik interests and the bohemian lost generation of the 1920s and the Taos arts thing of the turn of the century. These bohemian poetry, multimedia, has a soundtrack as well as visuals. It just really always made it for me because I was greatly influenced by MTV and discovering MTV on Community Access New York cable television in 1982. It changed my life and made me convinced that if anybody was going to lead an arts history thing, they've got to include music videos. And also made me kind of convinced growing up in the being born at the bicentennial and then growing up through the 80s and 90s and all of these sorts of things, remembering the 70s and having owned both Disco Duck and Saturday Night Fever radio albums and Grease, along with Tchaikovsky and, all, Peter and the Wolf, Nutcracker Suite kind of stuff, those my first records here, and fooling around with those. That whole thing, it kind of gelled for me in a in an idea that visuals and music and cultural history were the same nucleus, and somewhere around that over time philosophy kind of gathered around it like it was some kind of lint brush rolling across a piece of velvet. And I was always fascinated by these turn of the century or historic books about first foreign encounters and learning their etiquette and trying to understand the foreign culture and people who had to basically move there and assimilate because travel took that long. So, that always appealed to me far more than the idea of the kind of travel time space convergence that has been speeding up during my lifetime, where you can be in three different places at three times of the day. And the only variable is, do you have that lifestyle? Do you have that much money? Do you have those connections? It's kind of interesting. And that's part of the reason that I find people of very high status from the past very fascinating, actually, is because it's not the allure of their power, or certainly not the frustration I go through watching people misunderstand the concepts of their lives, but that historic thing, man. uh, I'm fascinated by it because throughout different time periods, people had way different expectations about their people in power and what constituted their right to be there or get rid of them, and what their lifestyle on a day-to-day basis was like, what their intimate lives versus their public persona. um, and I really see the entertainment celebrity world as like this extension out of like thousands of years of celebrity kind of learned or empowered or somehow special people who left these records. They were really good early PR people. Public representation of themselves was like fine tuned, and they had large masses of people to help them accomplish this. And they spent their entire waking moments, concentrating on how to best uh, achieve the goals of a populace of their whole realm. I mean, that's like crazy, and educated for that purpose and born of that purpose, because of these marriages and all of that. I find fascinating. But if you want to know what I do when I'm not on YouTube, what I should be doing all the time, I'm thinking, I gotta make more videos, man. I gotta make better videos, more entertaining videos that I've always wanted to make, that'll showcase things that are incredibly important to me, that I've written about for years. So, and I sincerely want to, but you might ask what I do with my time when I'm not like cleaning and cooking and taking care of myself and doing stuff that's mundane, or contemplating the mysteries of the universe, or watching YouTube videos, because there are a lot of good channels on here, right? So most of the videos that people watch on this channel, by the way, are there and curated because I wanted to make reaction videos to them, or I wanted to editorialize them in some way, or that a few of them are there just because I want to share them. But most of the playlists are curated kind of out of an attempt to organize my thoughts around future writing and publicizing my own videos and books about these topics. So I realize that gets kind of confusing. There aren't a lot of channels on YouTube that feature other people's videos en masse and update their playlists and use this like I do. I have a special talent for breaking electronics. I'm very proud of this. And a lot of that has to do with electromagnetic frequencies. So I avoid very technical topics of scientific research, particularly quantum physics, because I don't want to freak people out. I seriously, it's a fine line between, gee, this person's interesting, and God, this person's a dork. And so spread out, I'm sure they're completely nuts. Yeah, I don't like being perceived in a negative context, which makes some of what I encounter online very interesting. A large amount of me wishes that the entire internet world could just turn back the clock to 1997, and we could go back to using this as a scientific instrument. I gotta tell you that commercialism online is way overemphasized without the nonprofit part components that are necessary for people to use this. I keep seeing people come on and it's like, there are two people here, and then there's one person again. Hey, that's cool. At least there's somebody, right? It could be worse. And thank you for showing up. Thank you for supporting my videos. Thank you for writing me. Thank you for positive encouragement. It does make a difference as to like whether I show up here or not, whether I try to make something else happen or what we're doing here. So I realize that a lot of my content lately has been on the rather eccentric side, but I've been producing stuff that I've been wanting to produce for a really long time, and the dates just lined up, and I thought, hey, let's do this. What I do in my spare time is a lot of family research. And honestly, I should be doing more astrological research. People would probably find that better. Genealogy is one of the most boring topics for most people to go over, and it's very interesting because most people they force that stuff over to one side while they take care of more practical matters in life and leave it to the last part, and so they go over the same materials basically in that finite span, and by then not a lot of people are around to hear what they're talking about anyway, and maybe they'll write down some findings for the next person who's interested a couple generations down the line. And anyway, so it becomes a giant puzzle. Like if you thought this is nothing on crossword puzzles, this is nothing on like tabletop puzzles or 3D puzzles. No, 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 no. Man, when you're talking about individuals, you have like, you can work forward, you can work backwards, your choice. But all the while, you will have people who just showed up and they will want to know stuff that like you encountered when you first got there. And so, and you can't exactly slow down all your thing to say, hey, let me drop everything and make this my central focus when there's many revelations, many layers to that onion that they will need to uncover for themselves or rationalize or something. Maybe after they hear about it from the fifth person, they'll kind of believe it. I don't know, but maybe you shouldn't be the person to bring it up. Not that any of this is bad, but a lot of things are contextualized, right? They're always framed in the era of their time, the zeitgeist of their time. Okay, they are, and all of these framings and stuff over time can get incredibly convoluted and always have to do with, I don't know, who's around at the time, what answers you want to give, how much information you feel comfortable with, what your spouse told you, what you heard, all of this. This is crazy. So basically, I've dug up so much information. It is almost physically impossible for me to digitalize all of it. It is embarrassing the amount of research I have done. It is. So I thought that, I had these ideas. There are some YouTube videos that touch on certain topics that I would consider for said research to go into, which are entertaining. One of the series has the same violin solo. It's just the same violin piece in every video. I'm really interested in the videos. There's just print, and the print is like 4-second intervals, so you can't really read it all without like going back several times. And then there's the same violin solo. So while I admire the content immensely, and I admire the desire to put it out there, it is difficult for me to watch a lot of that particular channel because of the same violin solo and the 4-second intervals of giant amounts of text. So I don't know. I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just saying, my experience generally is that history, as an archivist, as an art historian, as a musicologist, and as a cultural anthropologist, as a digital media arts worker, okay, and anything else, audio producer, anything else you want to assign me the career title of, which, I've done all my life and nobody is really, other than blatant competition being, jostled around. I generally can't say that it's been a beneficial career path, but I certainly, it's not like one has a choice when one's destiny or life calling is perhaps, you know, something that is an epiphany and handed to them. One must follow that road that diverges into the woods, as Robert Frost poems go, or my sixth grade teacher wrote on a napkin. It was my seventh grade history teacher, wrote it on a napkin and gave it to me just to let me know that being weird and being different is good, but there's a downside. You can really hurt yourself by being individualistic. So, way to go. But I mean, I thought that her head helmet hairdo was really interesting too. So, we're talking about an iconoclast. If you're keeping a beehive hairdo quite like that, I mean, in like the late 80s, I mean, wow, and you're not into the B-52s, you're just into that hairdo from 1962. Obviously, your road diverged in a wood, lady. All right, anyway, okay. This is why I don't go live very often. I know my persona is obnoxious. I try really hard around others to tone it down. Um, it bugs me deeply when I see writing offers that are like, tell us about this and we'll offer you money, or sell us your personal story on this topic, or something. I find it disturbing that other people would want to make money off of any part of my story, my health, my personal experience, any of it, and not have like credit attributed to me, or in some way be involved in that picture. At least have people connect with me, and offer me positive support for something, or a creative exchange. Exchange is better than support. I'm a big fan of exchange and cooperation. I'm a child of the 70s. Cooperation was where it was at. Okay. And at some point everybody was on board at that point that differences were cool, similarities were cool, and we were all going to learn how to cooperate. All right. I'm kind of down with that. All right. So, call me a hippie, call me whatever you would like. Just, I mean, seriously, but that's not a calling on. Okay. That's not antagonizing the situation. I assure you. Um, I certainly do not want to encourage anyone to call me anything, or, in fact, focus on me at all. I would rather have a cooperative communal presence here at Mystic Ashram and in the channel in general. So, my ideas for doing tarot readings and stuff is that I don't want to do super chat readings, quickies for anybody, or personal readings at this time. There are a number of reasons for this. And while I will entertain certain astrology questions, if it's of a deep, resounding chart nature of your personal chart, I would strongly advise that you go to someone offering a personal reading. But that being said, I would very much like to make short documentary videos on, say, 10 minutes about a particular astrology card and how that archetype is viewed, both in Jungian and Lacanic psychology terms, as well as traditionally through cosmology and various cultures found throughout the planet. So I hope to do the same thing with probably planets. We're going to have to do Western planets and Eastern components to those planets and have a brief talk about the different perception of planets between hemispheres. And at some point, we're also, and signs, got to do a video for each sign. And and then we're going to have to get into aspects and stuff like that, but that's going to be several hundred videos, and I don't think I can hang in there for that. You might have to find yet another channel, but we'll try. I have no idea how long we'll be here or how much support in the long run I can be given for any of these adventures. So that has a lot to do with how much of my daily personal energy I can spend concentrating on one subject at a time. There's always a lot I tend to leave out of every video that I really should include, simply because I want to get it out there. There's nothing out there quite like it, and I feel that space needs to be occupied. If you see a need, fill it, as, say, John Stuart Mill or some other, semi-capitalist philosopher would say. So anyway, what is it, John Smith or something? Anyway, so my plan is to try and make genealogy less boring by doing a multifold approach and trying to create some videos which have to do with biographies and have enough detail that people can use them in their genealogical research for, creating personas which are beyond names and dates, which are just boring. Okay, once you get those hammered out, and I don't know why hundreds of us have to try hammering out the same names and dates and family profiles, but seriously, they've been published in multiple places the same way. So, once you see that a couple times, I think we get the gist. We just have to correlate that to the present. My rant earlier about how all the fields I explore, archives, art, music, media, fandom, history, they all are not cross-referenced towards descendants finding antecedents or progenitors. Okay, not even museums or in situ cultural spaces, certainly not, say, sacred pilgrimage spaces, are correlated to their potential audience through genetic DNA migratory paths. We're just not there yet. Anthropologically and archaeologically and cultural anthropology wise, all those ancient, we're talking ancient, okay, we'll go Middle Ages, early modern ages here, okay, which would be around what was called the Enlightenment, Renaissance, that time period, also time of inquisitions, also time of a bunch of social change, okay, modern government structures taking place. Anytime before that, people had multiple names. Please don't debate whether it's cool to have different monikers, whether people had middle names. No, they didn't have middle names. But if it defines 5 people named John from each other so that people don't continually have to use John Jr., John Sr., John the Third, John the Fourth, John the Fifth, which can be confused with monarchs also, not just people, and a bunch of other crazy stuff. Maybe there's a reason people have been using their mark, their hand techning, their hand drawing, their brand, their middle name, their pseudo nickname. Also, if you run across somebody with a really long name, it's really drawn out, right? They got multiple last names, and you could shorten like a couple of those to nicknames and have a perfectly fine name. Check out the nicknames. Check out the different spellings, okay? Probably same person. People go bat crazy, okay? They're just nuts about spellings, people having monikers, people doing also known as, people going underground during their lifetime, totally changing their surroundings overnight. It did happen. You could do that in history. People have this idea that they never moved. These people never moved. They never ran away. They never had to. A bunch of other crazy stuff. Anyway, so I'm just saying, history is a turbulent place, and not a lot has changed. And while I find really over the top people who are like way in your face about this is what I got going on, man, they can be overdone. But I also find people who make fun of them and are like, no way, ain't happening. You look one way, you're saying this, obviously no. I'm like, okay, look, maybe our documentation leaves a little bit to be desired, man. Maybe people are judging a little too based on our current parameters of mindset. I kind of like ancient history because of something, because strangers could show up out of nowhere and be perceived as really cool sometimes. And even though they wrote down, yeah, those people totally gone. Usually those people were not totally gone. Those people were like living next door and marrying in because, hey, you need some new people sometimes. You need to go to new places. You have the desire to experience stuff and live life to the fullest. And that really hasn't changed. So it's much more tempting to get together and party and eat food together and listen to music and share stuff and maybe, you know, do some merchanting and stuff like that and trade and those sorts of avenues than it is to constantly have warfare and annihilate like human life, which is really hard to come up with, hard to sustain, hard to, replace. Essentially, you don't want to have to replace people all the time. It's hard and it's impossible to replace a civilization or a cultural group after it's extinguished. So, on Yom HaShoah, happy Yom HaShoah, it's appropriate to speak about how people mitigate extenuating circumstances and how people have moved around and married and survived. And just what our preconceptions are of what a name like John Smith, Mary Baker, any innocuous, I'm just pulling names out of the air, don't get worried, Mary Jane Ward, who's a Ward, all these other things. And there isn't a typology, really. These names Americans come across every day. It's like, oh, a Miller, huh? I know Miller. I knew a Miller once. I knew a Wheeler. I knew a so-and-so, a Smith once. Smith was my man at my best wedding, my best man at my wedding. These kinds of things. And we long for those cousin connections. We long to know each other, to meet at a family reunion, to figure out where that trait comes from, to validate people's stories, to invalidate or debunk things. I don't like the idea that there are fake or fraudulent humans. This bugs me. Uh, it negates the idea that the individual's free will can assign themselves a personal identity in the world, regardless of anything else, just based on the times and places and contacts and genetic influences and surroundings that they encounter. They can invent a lifetime and a destiny and change courses and make decisions. It's empowering to all these people that they had divergent and differing, rich pasts and identities and full lives to be explored. My feeling is that our social conflicts, our disparities that we suffer so greatly in these times is born out of problems that Kant and Nietzsche and other philosophers discussed and Greeks discussed and Descartes, in fact, discussed, as well as Erasmus, which is, I think, therefore I am, and know thyself, and what is it to know yourself and your background, both your genetic self and your socially conditioned self. Is this self-knowledge? And how does this apply to others and your greater times? How does this enrich society and planning future? How can others benefit from these philosophical discourses and interpretations? Can someone else benefit from your hours of preparation, of knowledge? And that's where I'm at. Really, is that, what is academic knowledge if it serves no utilitarian purpose? And what is living in a time of strife if you do not make it easier, in the words of John Adams, for future generations to indulge in the arts and philosophy and more laissez-faire discourse, more intellectual, less utilitarian discourse later, because they live more of a life of leisure and ease because of you going through some sort of strife with your times, living in a time of strife. And I've wondered if the disjointed, disparate times that we live in is because we don't share very much of common narrative. And for example, Canada has the Métis. They are Native American and French and British Canadian and all kinds of stuff going on there, but they're Métis. And they have a very distinct flag. It looks like the flag of St. Andrews, but they have an eternity symbol on it. Newfoundland or those sorts of places, Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia is cool being Scots-Irish. They're so certain of being Scots-Irish. They have a very similar flag going on to Ulster and that kind of area. And so, there are these, I'm very, the Irish have a very complex identity, Northern Ireland and everything going on there, and the past 150 years is pretty touchy, and but their symbology is I'm very confused by the Celtic world. I will admit this now, because we have Gaels, we have Vandals, we have a lot of people in the Celtic world all crammed together under the headline of Celts, but there's obviously this swath that goes to Brittany and also to places like Cyprus and Minoan Crete, and these royal Scythian type things, which is basically like, how can everyone be Caucasian if the royal Scythians occupy that little isthmus right there? Okay, it's not, nobody else is there, just royal Scythians are right there on that isthmus, right there between those places, between Africa and the Mediterranean. It's right there. So, that's a very specific type of Anatolia. But if you get involved in talking about Scythians, if you get involved, you end up having people talk about Huns, Tartars, Mongols. They get way, everybody's involved. We're going to talk about a lot of things that, basically let's lump everybody in the ancient world together. We're pretty much sure. And that's, DNA is nice to have, because you can at least like differentiate out some groups and stuff like that. So we're not talking about Allens. If we're talking about royal Scythians, different group. And, there's this sort of academic research is definitely impeded by people at the turn of the century who wrote very long treatises on just who's a descendant of Cain and what's the lines of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and all of these things, which dragged a lot of stuff into it, and along with stuff that was being hashed out at the time with the Scopes trial and creationism and Darwin, you get all this stuff mixed together during the same time period. This is basically why anthropology and archaeology and cultural studies is almost impossible to study at a higher level in the United States today. That's what I have to say about it. If you would like to go to, perhaps you could perhaps join a theological college. They could help you in certain aspects. Otherwise, you could go into, say, some, maybe like legal stuff. I don't know, but and science. Hash that out for a while. I don't like arguing. It's strange because academically, you have to argue a lot. You have to play devil's advocate. I don't like people who play devil's advocate. I realize that any press or interaction is supposed to be considered good press, good interaction. I don't want negative press or interaction. I'm sorry if it messes up the algorithms of the internet to say that. But no, I just want positive interactions. If you have a question, I'll do my best. But no, I'm good without the negative interaction. I'm looking for connection, please, and better friendships, better bonds, more progress towards my lifetime work of trying to study thousands of years of the same people traveling and marrying other weird people. I'm very proud of the fact that so many iconoclastic individualists are part of my family background. It's nice. I would like to know more about their spacey, strange exploits and personal writings. I think it's much more important to gather information about the possessions, rituals, and personal affinities, oral histories, writings, testimonies, confessions, anything else about an individual. That's way, way more important than, do you have the date of the 1201 birth of so and so? Do you have all 7 children? What about those extra names? Look, man, let's tell some stories already, because these lists, I know. For a long time, oral history and song was basically, let me tell you the list of who begot who, because it's a clincher. But really, those lists are very useful. They can tell us a lot. They can tell us where stuff is buried. They can tell us who is the architect for an entire buried thing. They can also tell us stuff like, okay, that pseudonym in that list sounds a lot like this other name from this other list that's like 2,500 miles away. Are they the same guy? Maybe this is a mispronunciation or a colloquialism issue. What's the root tongue of these people in terms of mother language? Maybe we can get to, like, maybe they didn't write stuff down, but do you have something in Runic or Phoenician somewhere that was written by a captured scribe who was annexed to some faraway nation, who's talking about something that's miscategorized and stuck in the wrong drawer? Because if they possibly were reported on a certain way, then I think we're talking about the same people. Look, this is why we have art. It's so that we can cross-reference the visual with the written with some semblance of performance, dance, music, anything here for the senses, and we can get some idea what's going on. It's an investigatory process. Hopefully, through experiments on this channel, we can reach the bottom of age-old mysteries and still have something left over for my actual published books after it's all said and done. I've worried a lot about, when do I go public? How do I publish? What if people laugh me off the stage? All this other crazy stuff. How much do I tie in? How long of a time period should we include? Is this going to be fiction, as in a novella? Or should we go nonfiction and have peer review? All of these questions, they bother me. I gotta say, I'm not really sure. Meanwhile, I'm watching people just jump in that pool and get their Nobel Prizes or their Pulitzers or their doctorates or their masters or whatever they want. The world is their oyster, and all they have to do is be claim enough to grab that apple or oyster or crunch that cookie or see that ball drop. Anyway, so, the fact is, yes, a lot of content. Can't keep promising it to you without delivering. Really want to get it out to you. I want to write videos and make videos. See, I have old writing. I'm either going to have to ask you to forgive the fact that it's a little out of date or update it as I go. I think it's better update as you go. This is why people edit. So that it reflects my current ability levels and not how I was writing 10 years ago or 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Anyway, and these little tags at the videos, I hope that will show off the many diverse areas of, let's discuss this movie, let's discuss this film studies topic, let's discuss this song, and how it was written and where it's performed all over the world. Let's discuss these quotes just for fun. I wanted to make some more just little entertaining things like the Bayou memes tapestry thing. I like doing like a series of videos on subjects. It has been very difficult with my internet access to upload almost anything at length. That's why this live video is going to be so long. I'm happy to talk to you. I haven't been making videos for a while. I haven't been able to upload them. So an 8-minute video, it takes about maybe 10 hours to make, in production, rendering, writing, yada yada, and then it takes an hour and a half to upload that 8-minute video. That's what speeds we're dealing with. And about, if you'd asked me 2 months ago, it took me about, same 8-minute video would have been about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, somewhere around there. Pretty reasonable, pretty enthusiastic, looking forward to making the next one right away. Because, you know, you could see it blossom in terms of numbers right there, and it was fun. So, but we've been through many changes on this channel. We've been through lots of people getting involved and liking and sharing and subscribing and playlisting and going nuts and enthusiastic about what I'm saying, and writing in, to lots of people unsubscribing, being disillusioned, not really giving their input, but going, you know, I'm suddenly offended or bored, or I accidentally got unsubscribed. I don't know. But anyway, it's nice to have been here since YouTube practically started. Because pretty much all of my accounts on all of the platforms have changed various ways in this current time period that we lived through. And one of the things about being a media worker, which I find so fascinating, is it is exactly like being a spiritualist. Not only are you using terms like channel and medium and all these concepts, but really, you never know what media will do with any project. Not a live broadcast, not a video recording that you upload, not a movie, not a song. You are never sure with electronic media from day to day how, if it'll be retrievable and in what form. So that is actually part of the creative work of satellite broadcast and electronics and all of this, is that through, say, electromagnetic interference or different vibes and auras or various uploads, AI monitoring, say a satellite upload, a freak, as in frequency accident, a sun flare. It could be anything, but you will never know completely when you're doing it what kind of result on electronics you're going to get. Just like music, just like painting, just like any art form, when it's being done, creativity has an otherworldly, some would say, it wasn't them. They didn't know how it happened. It just emerged that way. It presented itself that way to everyone else, but not its creator. Its creator saw it as one thing. Everyone else who encountered it afterwards saw it as something else. And that perception, that difference between the seer and the seen, those semantics, I find semiotics as a field totally fascinating, because you're talking about the sign, the noom, the pneuma, right? The word, the glyph, You're talking about that versus the concept, the actual act, the ritual, the thing in practice, right? The physical thing that symbol represents. And then you're talking about how everybody's agreed to connotize, have a connotation for this experience and this noom, this symbol, how we talk about it, what the actual like intellectual concept of this is. I'm not explaining it very well, but you have sign, symbol, and experience, basically. This was all designed by somebody who was deeply, deeply thought to be, let's say, neurodivergent, aneurotypical, the field of semiotics. But semiotics is incredibly important for the concept of authenticity and meaning. And authenticity and meaning are basically what's been hijacked in about 150 years of industrialization and PR and marketing. It's basically like, let's take everybody out of their inner organic environment, shake them up, and just toss some random info at them, see if they can make sense of their lives, and then be shocked when they're wandering around like lost about themselves, lost about where they belong, lost about their life path, lost about like who they should hang out with, whether they're okay or not, whether they should freak out, what they should do about everything. I mean, so this is kind of like, I guess, in some way, in my mind palace, to cop a term, this is how I cope with stress. Is I think about universal cosmological symbols, how they apply realistically or unrealistically, and why people have used them so long everywhere. And I think about those archetypes and a la Joseph Campbell or, Marshall McLuhan or any of the people who I deeply admire, Noam Chomsky, Howard Zinn. I think about all this stuff and I try to condense it. And you can see how I spend my time. Hell of a hobby, huh? I wonder why, I find it hard to relate to others. No problem. If you ever need 10 minutes from somebody with a lot of cultural studies stuff to say and no desire for conflict whatsoever, and you need a guest for your news talk show, let me know. I'm here any day. Okay, so basically I try to figure out how this relates to our cultural problems and what to do about it, and basically how to make things better, how to make people feel better, how to give them a sense of self they can pass on with relative confidence and use in their everyday lives in a practical sense. How to like honor some of the timeless kind of humanistic archetypes that people have been tossing around for a long time now, and how to basically support people in their personal growth, and not from a life coach way, not from a psychologist standpoint. I honestly see things much bigger picture than that. My personal view is that systems, in a Skinner fashion, Skinnerite fashion, B.F. Skinner, systems drive people to take actions that they do, or to find the outlets that they have, or come to the conclusions that they come to, whatever they perceive those social or physical systems to be. they adapt accordingly, perhaps not in the most healthy ways, and to their own self-deprecation, self-deficit. And so because of this, I feel strongly that while counselors are important, and talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy is right on, and I'm very into Gestalt, and a big fan of Esalen Institute's work, and these sorts of transactional analysis, sort of revolutions, social mental health revolutions that I've grown up in during the course of my lifetime. These are not new movements for personal growth, and they have benefit, merit. And I think that perhaps other cultures have implemented some of these en masse strategies for psychological health better, perhaps, than our current situation in my current culture. So these sorts of social programs, we're not just talking subsidy here. We're talking about how buildings are designed, how plants and living animals are integrated into people's daily lives and lifestyles, how accessible things are for children in the community, how welcome everyone feels in said community, regardless of perceived background, how much their personal individual privacies are protected in our current world, or how safe the individual feels in their daily environment, whether that be at work or at home. Whether they feel healthy and well rested, whether they feel cared about by other individuals they come in contact with in a regular basis, whether they have substitutes for social media, whether they feel overly burdened by their financial positions, how this plays a role in their children's perceptions of reality and education, and the possibility for long-term advancement, and the lifestyle choices that they make in response to their parents' lives. How generations progress, how grandparents play a role in their children's lives, how essential the lengthening human lifespan and having elders in the community to take care of grandchildren rather than have to work during that time, how essential that really is to a society being able to pass on its information to future generations accurately. All of these things are essential. They are utterly essential. And they make people not feel individually irrelevant because of a vast number of people, which are overpowering in huge populations, huge surges of unnatural conditions. And that doesn't mean we don't need electricity anymore. It doesn't mean, but it does mean being consciously aware of how electricity affects things like the inner clock, or how to mitigate that with, say, some, melatonin, or how to mitigate that with walking around the block, or getting your daily amount of sunlight and your daily amount of darkness also. Learning how to calm down just from the very start, the very basics of self-care. These are things that young children need to be encouraged to just be hanging out, making good social relationships with other young children in a safe environment. That's healthy. That's good. They can work on school naturally as a progression after basic self-care and social skills have been mastered. I think it's interesting that Montessori was kind of danced around, and we had to import kindergarten from Germany. Childhood education with the entire concept of standardized testing and also the rise of charter schooling, the rise of public versus private schooling, all of these things causing so much discourse and so much strife. And homeschooling, all of it. So this is a natural progression, but I gotta tell you that from the perspective of, say, Europe, where kids go home to eat lunch, the idea that and their home is right there because they don't get bussed in from across town, and their teacher lives down the block because she doesn't commute 2 hours wasting gas to a school she was assigned. She lives near the school, and a bunch of other stuff, so that she knows her community, or he knows his community, and all of this stuff. This is kind of weird for Europeans because, like, generally you would eat your lunch at home anyway. And why wouldn't your home have food? Don't you have food that's like affordable and good for you, except at school? And it's okay that you get breakfast and lunch at school, but doesn't your home have food on a regular basis? That's a little strange. So, yeah, we had overtaxed social systems before. And the idea that anybody at all would choose to, like, need stuff and have to ask for stuff because they're somehow just not wanting to work or not a good person or don't want to contribute or they make bad decisions. And so therefore should somehow be punished from eating or having a place to live or any of that stuff, man. That's some ridiculous hype. Okay, that's some total and complete crap. So that one guy who, like, chooses to live on the streets, there's like one dude, and they always quote him. So find him, and we'll create a bus shelter for him or something. But the rest of the people who are on the streets, I guarantee you, they would happily accept an apartment or a hotel room or like a dinner reservations or whatever, have a nice meal. And getting by on food bank food is not eating a steak dinner at Christie's or Ruth's Steakhouse or we're not talking Scalo. It's not like a relaxing experience of fine dining. Okay. It's a 5-pound block of cheese and some macaroni. I mean, come on, man. So it's I'm preaching to the choir, and we all preach to the choir. So yeah, my life hasn't changed much. I gotta tell you, I'm kind of nervous around a lot of people for health reasons, and I got it. Now everybody's kind of as nervous as I am. So anyway, I feel for you. Whatever you're going through, my heart goes out to you. Because I know everyone is going through something right now. And if nothing else, this gives us strength because we're all going through something together. And that's unification for sure. So anyway, I'm getting sappy. and sentimental. But thank you for the thumbs up. Whoever did that, bless your heart. More power to you. I really appreciate it. Warms the cockles of my heart. Cockles are little seashells. They're like snails. They're basically escargot. So basically, I love escargot. Escargot is awesome. With a little butter, a little spinach, a little lemon. I'm sorry, I do love the little snail. Sometimes they're gamey if they're not prepared right, but I've had some very good escargot, and I like French bread and Cuban bread. I'm not an advertising person. I'm not an advertiser for a strict vegan or vegetarian diet. However, I have gone through periods of cleanse and macrobiotic diet and vegetarianism and veganism and all kinds of things throughout my life at various points, including cutting off caffeine for months and sugar and months or years. All kinds of juice diet cleanses and stuff. Big fan of spirulina algae. Huge fan of spirulina algae. There are various grades. So that rainbow Hawaiian spirulina algae, can't get enough of it. Totally about the kelp and the seaweed in terms of the diet. And I'm a big fan of vitamin C. Linus Pauling is okay by me. I sincerely have a hard time with some of the disinformation or, the strange rise of these scientists who are like, Linus Pauling was wrong. You can only absorb so much vitamin C. It's like, yes, you can only absorb so much vitamin C before you have to go to the bathroom a lot. So cut down your thing until you no longer have to go to the bathroom. That's the amount you're supposed to take. Just telling you. Still good for you. All right. And wheatgrass is awesome. I mean, basically I spend most of my time just exploring various things that recently have been kind of classified as, I don't know, they're in a nebulous vacuum of vitamin supplements and health things are good for you, but be aware that we're not endorsing this for anything whatsoever. If you want to try it, go be my guest, but hey, we're not promising, Anyway, which is a big change from about, I don't know, the entire time I was growing up, anytime before 20 years ago, when everybody was like, oh, that's the latest thing, ginseng? Let's all have ginseng! It's all been replaced by Starbucks coffee. But ginseng is also good for you. It's been replaced by the little pink 24-hour energy stuff. Yeah, and the bat guano and taurine from Red Bull. But I'm going with ginseng and ginger on this. The more pure you can get, the better. Ayurveda is mostly composed of kitchen spices. For those of you who don't know, I don't know if I'm giving away the big secrets here. And one of the reasons that I have a hard time getting to yoga on my channel is that it's a deep delve, man. To borrow a phrase from several of my favorite YouTubers, it's a deep delve because, see, exercise to the US is mostly about monitoring your heart rate and calisthenics and doing cardio up to a certain point, and then you switch over to some fine tuning of muscle strengthening, and then you switch back to cardio so that you can get that lysylic acid out of your muscles so that you don't have muscle cramps after your workout, and you have that strengthening going on, and that's our exercise regimen. That's how we understand exercise. And you do this so that you will live longer and so that you are toned and so you can accomplish your tasks for as long as possible. Well, I gotta say, Indian yoga and tantra, which is, I guess, also Western Chinese, and incorporates pretty much a lot of Asian stuff there, up and down mountain range. All right. Uh, well, um, it is considered a mini fold thing. Yes, it helps your breathing. It helps regulate bodily regulatory functions in a really good way. You can tune in to certain things on a deep level, such as breathing, heart rate. Um, it can help you modulate your tone of voice. It can do a lot of things that are important for self control. It can help you reset your brain and your clock. It can do a lot of stuff in terms of self stuff. Um, it also is used to burn away karma. Karma is very misunderstood in the West and very misportrayed, and it's often confused with something called the threefold law. Threefold law, which is basically kind of like the golden rule. Whatever goes out, garbage out, garbage in. Good stuff out, good stuff in. Magnified. Yeah. Karma, in the traditional sense of the word, that is not that. What actions you're performing is dharma. Karma is a larger process. And I was going to make a video just on this because it's kind of an important concept to understand. Karma comes down ancestrally, like genetically, but it also comes down through past lives and the reincarnation of our souls. So yeah, it goes with the precept that we work out not only our unfinished tasks, we work out others' unfinished tasks in both our ancestral lines as well as people we could have just known or come in contact with in past lives. And when we do stuff like read someone's astrology chart or become heavily engaged with them as a mentor, or say take on a romantic relationship with them, any number of things that's a deep into me I see or intimacy process, then we take on some of that person's karma and they take on some of ours. So we have to burn away any of those negative karmas we may have encountered, even through inheriting, say, you like something at a thrift store and you want to buy it, but it happened to belong to somebody who had a lot of problems. But you take it home anyway, and it's one of your favorite things in the world. And, but it still has mostly the energy of the owner you got it from. And what do you do about it? So this incorporates a lot of concepts. Also, why would anyone want to say, they're coming in contact with these concepts, and you're like, well, I'm not Wim Hof. I don't need to sustain myself in an ice storm. I'm not planning on, say, meditating underneath a Bodhi tree for, waiting for enlightenment for 30 years eating only one like small grain at a time every day. I'm not planning on attempting any of that, so why would I want to do cleanses or a special diet or necessarily learn any of the 12 types of Raj yogas practiced as the Patanjali original forms mentioned in the Vedas? I'm not planning on attempting any of this world record setting stuff that they always mention. Why on earth would I want to, do this alchemical process of delving, believing in past lives, dealing with ancestry karma, or all of this? Well, from a very practical viewpoint, you don't have to believe in a lot of this stuff for it to have a benefit. You can make up your own boundaries. You can explore. Some people practice, mantras, which is a specific phrase that they repeat either musically or as a poem. And this brings them great comfort. Other people practice mudras, which are hand signals. Say this, or even V for victory, or Spock, live long and prosper. Any of these things, mudras play a part. And mudras are like a little miniature asana. Asanas are body postures, by the way. So we're talking about the difference between mantras, mudras, and asanas. And now we can talk about mandalas. Yay! Mandalas are based on cosmic shapes. So you're familiar with the square, the cube, the triangle, the octagon, the sphere. You name a shape common in Euclidean geometry. And yes, I bet there's a mandala for that. Mandalas are actually incredible, deeply cosmic manifestations of visual mathematical thought processes, which are they're an attempt to describe like a geometric vision and philosophy and basically a vibe. When you meditate on someone's picture and you are positive towards that picture, it is considered tataranam, a tataranam meditation. It's a tatra, and a tattva. I don't say these things out loud, I think them. So the pronunciation is difficult. It is a tattva, and tattva is to deeply meditate for manifestation. Sometimes the ideas which are meditated on are so vast that an individual or a place representation does not help. So you have these mandalas. Sometimes people sew them. Sometimes people will make them out of sand. You draw them, color them. Mandorla is another way to pronounce it. So same root words. Just explaining a little bit, but it is like art history on the quantum level is the point. When you enjoy a piece because it's hanging out with you, when you're going to a museum and in passing the time studying the life of a maker of a work of art, or the life of an artwork as it traveled between hands, a la The Red Violin, one of my favorite movies, or, any of these other things. Um, Basically, for the time period that you're spending hanging out with that piece of art or that picture of that individual in your space, that is that tattva, tratakanam meditation of a mandorla, or mandala. Uh, which brings me to a particular cultural studies, alternative history concept and fixation that I'll have to make a video about, I'm sure, because it affects me all the time. It's driving me nuts, which is the Mandela effect, also known as the Mandala effect. You can use both terms interchangeably because of the effect. And it is when media or information, books, even your physical environment can change through happenstance, and you swear it was not that way before. Like political events, historical events. Say you saw a movie 30 years ago, you watch it again, and you swear it's not the same movie. It's either better or worse than that movie you once saw, but man, that is not the same movie from 30 years ago. You know that. Well, as we've digitized stuff, yeah, it's not just Turner Network broadcasting colorized a bunch of black and white films. I mean, everything in my lifetime, from the way everything was when I was 20 to the way everything is now at 44, has changed. I'm not the only one to notice this. And this is the effect that alternative history people and counterculturalists and all of the cultural studies people have basically decided to term for the phenomena of, wait, what happened to the first 20 years of my life? And how did I get here? Because the first 20 years did not set me up for the next 25. I can tell you that. This is not it. I learned how to write checks, man. Are you kidding me? My rent was supposed to be 25% of what I was supposed to reasonably make, according to the workbook in 6th grade. They told me I had to learn algebra. And a bunch of other stuff. They said, a bunch of stuff, and it ain't true anymore. So not only that, but now, like, there's a bunch of other people. They showed up all of a sudden one day. It was like, why are there so many people? And why does everything seem like way more used now? Like, because there's too many people using it. How did that happen, man? Yeah. And so that just happened. I mean, it happened, like, really over time, but I can remember it really thinking about this like 20 years ago, and it just kept happening. And not only that, I've been really a big fan of historic preservation my entire life. There was a bunch of cool historic stuff all over America. First 20 years I was here, they tore it all down. They replaced it. They decided they would much rather have, I don't know, like new stuff or something. But and get rid of everything old instead of fixing it and repairing it because like nobody came here for the old stuff. But the truth was that this was our home and we liked that old stuff. And that's the only reason anybody came to visit or want to be here is because we had that old stuff. And now we don't have that old stuff anymore. And it's like a matter of, well, are we going to create new old stuff? Or like, are we just going to move on and mourn the old stuff? Or like, can anybody else make that stuff? And who is designing everything now? Like the buildings and the products and the food. Who decides what is our material culture and like what's valuable? Who goes with this now? Who's like, well, the focus group loved it, so we're gonna saturate the market with it. It's not just a matter of like some stuff isn't tested and might be like bad, but it's a matter of we had a bunch of stuff that everybody loved and you got rid of it. Where is it? Why? Why did you get rid of it? Can you bring it back? Would you please bring it back now? I'm talking about drive-in movie theaters, diners that are 24 hours with coffee, real coffee that's drinkable, and real dairy products. Colleges that locally sourced their kitchens. Like habitable buildings that didn't look like they were all designed by one dude who's fixated with Nantucket and aluminum siding and like the idea that 8 people can be crowded into a 12-foot by 12-foot space. You know, I mean, this is ridiculous. We had this idea that outsourcing just meant we could all live in Bali and like Skype in on the, you know, when we had to work. That was 25 years ago. We've lost a lot of movie theaters and stuff since then. I mean, I know we're not allowed to go to movie theaters, but when we did go to movie theaters, they were like shrines. They were big. They were the size of our houses when you went to the movie theater. Now, some of us have televisions the size of the movie screens. We might as well just stay home. It's sad. And they blame us for not patronizing movie theaters. Why don't you make the movie theater popcorn affordable? Make the theater tickets like $2 and make the theaters like shrines and temples and like, you know, pretty and stuff, and we'll go again. You know, there was lots of stuff that we liked. Drive-ins used to serve pizza, you know, or nachos. You know, there were lots of things that like were affordable and they kept us united. And when those things became more expensive and harder to get hold of, and like nobody had the time anymore, we were just like, well, I guess we were told time marches on, forget about those things, something new for indecisive, you know, people will come along, you know, and you'll like it just as much. You know, the reason that like other cultures kind of thrive and have tourists and like are happy with where they live and stuff is because they have cultural resources and they support their intellectuals and their artists and that they believe they're experts when their experts talk. They're not just like, man, you bore me. You and you think you know it all. Well, I know just as much as you. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, it all comes down to philosophy, you know, and mutual respect, and whether we all have like a self identity that's strong enough to withstand interaction or not. Whether we believe in ourselves and we can recognize others and believe in them and what they're trying to say, and not constantly seek out conflict just in the name of having an interaction. that conflict would become our go-to interaction is because we just don't have enough uniting us. And there used to be plenty uniting us. I mean, all over the place, there was stuff uniting us. And it makes me sad that history is like, the Battle of blah blah! And we know no women's names. We really have no idea how these people lived, but we're going to talk about the Battle of blah blah some more. You know? Well, yeah, generals and kings and battles, those are all pretty important, and they give us little like points on that timeline. Not putting military history down, good Lord knows historians need all the love we can get. You're a hysterian, as the building teams who were freaked out by me photographing old buildings would often call me. But, just don't route us out to the union or the government or a contractor or anybody. You're not one of those hysterians, are you? It's like, yes, I'm the most benign sort of hysterian there is. I'm a social hysterian, and I study things like how people give birth, why women are constantly trying to take care of people and teach them to take care of themselves just health-wise. Why people are influenced by song, what portraits meant to people in lieu of photography, how photography exposed a bunch of their secrets they really didn't want exposed. I mean, if you had a painter, they would pretty much paint to please you. If you have a portrait, you can't alter that. If you have a photo tells it like it is. You can't hide then. So keep that painting going, all of that. Anyway, and I find music very fascinating because the whole concept of the history of music is troubadours. I mean, those guys traveled everywhere, and they were always in connection with some divine force leading them from one place to the next to carry on their adventures and learn another song and perform that song for somebody of high status, or somebody called for them to hear the song, or that song was the only telling of that battle. And, that kind of thing. That's important. That's interesting. And those battles are much more interesting if you know, hey, there was a wedding and a birth and some stuff happened during that battle. And there was eventually that couple got married, and I don't know how he married her after blah, blah. It's like, oh, it gets deep. I like the deep. Okay. I like knowing that there's got to be a legend. There's got to be a mythology. There's got to be a story. Otherwise, people would have forgotten this stuff long ago. And I find Eastern philosophies and Eastern religions and perspectives very reassuring, because they offer deep continuity with 5,000 years of human history, and a different way of perspective. But most of all, I find it reassuring because it lacks, in my interaction with people who have had association with Eastern religious movements, Tantra, Eastern philosophy practices, they lack the cynicism that Western culture has cultivated in its industrial age. I'm not saying all of my interactions have been positive over time. You have variety. But for the most part, if you present yourself a certain way or you talk a certain way, they will listen and be open to encountering or sharing or cooperating or just hearing, being present. not being flippant or sarcastic, not necessarily defaulting to defensive right away. So much of, I think, that stuff is industrialization. It's an offshoot of PR and conditioning, advertising, marketing, just inundation of how people react, how families get along, how, like, that we all are supposed to be the family from a sitcom, or we're all supposed to live at the pace of, say, a soap opera, or any of that. And if we're not doing it right, we're not living right. Some bar is set because of it has to do with, television, radio, and who we talk to and how we speak to them, which words we use, how we pronounce that, and whether we can give like a full representation of who we are in a brief amount of time, and whether that's perceived as authentic, which is deeply, deeply conflicting for people these days. Being perceived as you want to be perceived, whether you're presenting yourself as authentic enough, whether you're concentrating on the fine-tuned details that might make somebody like you, or might make somebody respond a certain way. Whether you presented that aspect, and when you present another aspect to yourself, they're like, whoa, they're in conflict. I better not like this person anymore, or I better start something, or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, people are three-dimensional. They have lots of interests. They tend to be multidimensional if they're authentic with themselves. They have pasts, they have allegiances, they have, and everybody has some form of predisposition to dislike of certain things. Certain areas make them uncomfortable, So in that quest for authenticity, in that quest for being genuine, we go through many phases of personal growth. And these phases of personal growth are easiest. Good night. Thank you. These levels of personal growth, they're easiest for people closest to us to deal with. They're like, whoa, you changed, you're wild, you're crazy, go back to the way you were, maybe, or gee, I like this direction, keep at it. But for strangers who encounter us in, say, a setting like this, where I should be moving around more and being more entertaining than just monologue, droning on. In a situation like this, this is it's a area where people want you to have your stuff fine-tuned, or it's not professional. They expect you to have your stuff written in bullet points and laid out. Forgive me for my pause. It's just somebody's chatting on my channel, not necessarily to me. So good night. Good night, all. Thank you for writing in. Appreciate it. So, I just wanted to tell you thank you so much for listening to me in this long diatribe. It's been like an hour and 45 minutes. We'll see what happens with this video after I'm done. But I genuinely appreciate you hearing me, and I will keep on keeping on. If you guys have input about, I don't know, which series you would like to see first, or if you have a favorite type of artwork, or say you just really like an unusual type of music, I would love it if you'd comment. That'd be awesome. I'd like to continue the musicology series soon with some ANU stuff. I'd like to start a genealogy type talk. So that's got to be for like separate videos. And I would definitely like to explore more of those mystical realms. We're probably going to do some more top 10 lists, but we're going to try to sensationalize and jazz it up a bit. Say sacred places of the world in conjunction with unusual people types, like various tribes and groups. That'll be nice. I have a lot of legends and stories and myths of the histories of Mohawk and Delaware and Cherokee and Shawnee and so on, and I would like to make videos about that. But also like to make some productions using dolls and puppets, because people weren't concerned enough about my sanity. I'm going to have dolls and puppets involved. And hopefully we'll do some breathing stuff. So that'll be some pranayama. We will be doing some reading. It's probably easiest for me just to do live stream readings of various small books at this point. So if you have, say, something in specific that you would like me to read in terms of a poem, by all means. Anyway, so I'm just putting this out there. I appreciate you letting me be my eccentric, authentic self. And I sincerely hope you will receive this video in the spirit with which it's sent out. And thank you so much for joining me during this video diary. And I hope to get back to you very soon with probably what's going to be a moon report about the moon in Taurus here coming up. Yay! So take care, and all the best to you, and a big hugs. And thanks so much for hanging out. All the best.